Hello, listeners, and welcome to a special edition of S4, the official voice of Forest Moon Paranormal. As Monday is November 11th, we will be taking this time to recognize the courage, bravery, and sacrifice that each member of the armed forces has displayed in their service to our countries, our lives, and our freedom. Please join us tonight as we give thanks to all those who fought and fight to protect us each day.
Now sit back, open your mind, get ready, because this is S4.
Good evening or morning, depending where you are, and welcome to S4, the dark voice of the paranormal and conspiracy, coming to you live from the S4 headquarters in the heart of the Cascade Mountains of eastern Skagit County in Washington State. S4 is the voice where you'll hear everything covering all aspects of the paranormal, from hauntings and alien interaction, Bigfoot and other cryptids, and everything in between that makes you question reality. We also cover topics for safety, such as disaster and terrorist response and preparation, and veterans issues on Memorial and, well, as you all know, it's Veterans Day weekend. So not only can you find S4 right here on Spreaker, but also on s-4radio.com, and for our local listeners, also on KSU 90.1 FM from 10 to 12 Saturdays with pre-recorded shows. So tonight, it's November 9th, and for some of us, this is a special time of remembering what we have done. It's Veterans Day, and for some of us, can still be a hard time full of memories and things we miss or don't miss. What does it take to be in military? What do we expect? The things that can happen to us when we come home. So tonight with us we have Colweg Leitner, our co-host and former Canadian Sea Cadet. I got it right. Don Davidson, our California consultant and Army veteran. And Captain Emery Erickson, active duty Army and stationed somewhere overseas. I know, it's Korea, but somewhere overseas sounded better. So how are y'all doing tonight?
Perfect.
Well, I'm doing awesome. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon here for me.
But it's Sunday for you, isn't it?
It is Sunday, and it's a 4-day weekend, thanks to Veterans Day weekend, so I'm having a good time.
Well, you know how the military is. Every holiday you get a 4-day weekend. And I know our commanders, if it wasn't a 4-day weekend, if there wasn't a holiday in that month, he'd say, we're going to have a training holiday, and he'd just give us a 4-day weekend for the hell of it. Good old days.
Yep.
You remember those days, Don?
I'm sorry, what?
The days where there was no holiday, so the commander would just say, screw it, we're going to have a training holiday.
Yeah, those are great.
Oh, okay, so we're going to kick right off into it. And are you still with us, Emery? I saw your video go off. Did we lose Captain Erickson?
Give me 1 second. I think he froze.
Okay. And that's what happens when you have overseas Skype. All right, where are you at? Oh, I hate having to show where we have technicals right in the beginning.
Right?
Get them out of the way.
Right, but unfortunately we probably won't.
Okay, yeah, no, he's gone.
Okay. I'm gonna close that one out. And bear with me, folks. Bear with me. Let's see here. So getting right to it. So Don, why did you join the military?
You want the real answer or do you want the PC answer?
I want the real answer. There you are. So we got Emery back. Okay, so we want the real answer.
I joined the military.
There you go.
And to basically get out of my parents' house, and there's nothing else for me outside of the military for me at that time.
Okay. Fair enough. Because you actually,
Yeah.
you know, that was one of the things I always asked my soldiers when new soldiers came to the unit and they came to my section and they're under me was, why did you join? And some of them gave you the cheesy answer, oh, I wanted to serve my country, and that's a fair enough answer. But some of them just say that because they want you, they think that's what you want to hear. After 9/11 is when you really saw the patriotic surge of wanting to join because, well, I want to go kill me some terrorists. So, are you in a command position, Captain Erickson?
I'm not. I'm a human resource. So I've been working right pay, help commanders make sure the right people are in the right positions, try to anticipate personnel shortages when people are leaving the unit, when people are coming in, all that sort of stuff.
Human resource. Okay, I got you. See, you're personnel.
Roger.
That would be S1.
I am the mighty S1
Exactly.
most of the time.
Okay. Yeah, for listeners that have no clue about the military, S1 is personnel, S2 is security, S3 operations, and S4 supply.
S6 is communications, and when you get up into general staff, you get things like finance and other things. But yeah.
So, Anne-Marie, why did you join the Army?
I was just ready for a change. I just spent 6 years as a mental health worker working with severely abused and neglected children. And I was in Colorado. I had a marriage that just ended. I didn't own a home. And I was just ready for something new challenge. I wanted to do something completely different than the mental health and social work field. I wanted to do something that would be physically challenging. And I thought it was a good fit.
Wow, I didn't expect that. So you were a mental health worker for 6 years?
Yes.
So you went in with a degree, and what made you want to go officer corps versus enlisted?
Well, it was an option, and when I looked at all the different options and I weighed my options, there are definitely a lot of great things and great benefits that go along with being an officer. I'd been in a supervisory or management role while a civilian, and so I thought I could apply those skills in the Army.
Excellent. And you've deployed. I know you were in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
How many other tours did you do?
That's it. 1 year in Afghan, and I wouldn't even call Korea a deployment. It's got its own set of challenges, but it's really wonderful living here, as opposed to places like Iraq, Bosnia, era.
Exactly agree. Now I can tell we're gonna have Skype issues just because and everyone was laughing because Korea, he can actually have Skype in Korea. Well,
Oh man, I'm so spoiled. I'm so spoiled on the Wi-Fi here. The internet connections are incredible, and I'm gonna have a hard time when I come back to the States.
Right. So where are you going from Korea? Do you know yet?
I don't. I think I might try to stay here another year. I really like it over here. Their politics are so interesting. I don't know if you knew this, but a couple years ago, their prime minister was investigated and tried and convicted of corruption, removed from office, and put in jail. So their democracy here is alive and well. On any given weekend in the capital in Seoul, you'll see the corners of the downtown just filled with protesters, whatever their issue, whether it's politics or workers' rights. People are out in force and voicing their opinions loudly and often. So it's really neat to see democracy in action.
Yeah,
That those trials, you think you can bring those home with you?
I wish that democracy worked here. Um, but we won't go down that road. That road might actually come up later on in the show. Okay, so you're human resources. Have you always been human resources?
I have, at least in
Okay,
the military.
right, right, right. And Don, you were infantry,
I was cavalry.
cavalry. So what specifically was your MOS, and what specifically did you do?
I was a 19 Delta, and I was a basically a I. It's a combination of the combat engineer and the infantry, where I go out and do reconnaissance of enemy positions. And in Iraq's case, it was a lot of forward operating bases and watching over the MSRs. We did a lot of route clearances, clearing of the houses, the villages, just basic infantry that everybody learns. Um, so yeah, I was in Humvees, and I was usually put as a gunner because that's the one good thing I could do in the military was shoot. So
Okay, for listeners that have no idea about military, what's an MSR?
uh, is it manned supply route? I know it's supply route, but I forgot what the M stands for.
I think yeah, manned or main supply route.
Yeah.
So you gotta talk in simple talk because we have a lot of listeners that have no clue about the military, and that's why we do these shows. Is one to explain what we do in the military, and what are some of the issues veterans face. So that's going to be the the crutch of the show. So for those that don't know me, I was a combat medic and a truck mechanic. Those were my jobs, along with safety NCO, which is a non-commissioned officer, sergeant. I was a fire marshal.
So you went from fixing trucks to fixing people. So you're a
Exactly.
fixer basically.
And like we'll get into recruiting too later on in the show. But like the recruiter told me, oh wow, that means you can fix people and actually fix your own ambulance. Well, yeah, okay, whatever, dude. Um,
Only after you get done inventorying the damn thing, which takes you half the month anyway.
right. So the thing was, every unit I went to as a mechanic, they were always short medics. So I wind up doing both jobs. In the signal world, for example, they had no medics. They had combat life takers. I mean savers. And yeah, we call them combat life takers because
Tell you
uh,
what, when I went through basic training in 2009, they were still teaching the CLS, the full CLS class. So I got 2 weeks, and I actually got to stick people with needles. As a
yep,
totally untrained civilian, we were learning how to put IVs in one another, and it was so cool. In the States, as a civilian, you have to become a paramedic to get that level of first aid. So we did drills with combat tourniquets, which is basically a loop of Velcro that you quick put over someone's leg. There's a strap, you pull it tight, and then there's basically a built-in stick that you twist and you crank it down. And so we were drilling to attach that thing within 5 seconds, and
yep,
then stick each other's arms. And man, it was fun.
yeah, and that's why we do these shows too. People don't understand. So as a combat medic, when you try to explain it in civilian terms, I was a paramedic plus
Yeah.
because We do a lot more CBRN training, for example. So CBRN is chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive. We do a lot more CBRN training, a lot more terrorist response. The casualty rate with terrorist action that a paramedic's really not going to know what to deal with. Triage came from the military, and it gets frustrating as a veteran trying to explain things to civilians that don't take the experience you've been through, the training you've been through, the schooling you've been through, and the experience. They just kind of blow you off.
It's really an art form, not only just to use English that people understand, but I hate to say it, but I was reflecting a couple of days ago that you had to have been there. So, for example, when I spent a year in Afghanistan, it's very unusual to live day in, day out with a lot of people around you possibly wanting to kill you and not knowing who's who. And I had a pretty secure compound, but we always wonder about the housekeepers and the guys that did the laundry and the guys that cooked our food. And when you leave a compound and you're driving someplace, you just never know what cars, what people around you are Taliban that have infiltrated the Afghan National Army or police or are laying an ambush. You never know. And so there's this constant unease, paranoia that you get used to living with every day, all the time. And trying to explain what that's like to someone is pretty much impossible. You really had to live it, had to be there.
Well, and you mentioned that, and that's why today I still pretty much only eat one meal a day because in 2004-5, when I was in Balad, they actually found capsules in the breakfast burritos, and there was a whole CID investigation over who put the capsules there, what were they. Soldiers got sick, but I don't think anyone died from it. But at that point in time, I went to one meal a day, and I only ate food that I could actually see because it was nationals that were cooking our food.
Yeah, it's the same thing in Afghanistan. So the Afghan army guards that were guarding our compound, they all called in sick one day. And so Americans took up the positions around the perimeter and the gates and performed, security. Well, it turns out ours was one of 3 compounds where all the guards called in sick because the Afghan catering company that was contracted to provide food for the guards at those bases had been infiltrated by the Taliban, and all the food had been poisoned. So that was their way of trying to, create a security problem on multiple bases. They could take advantage of. So yeah, it's unless you've been through something like that. I certainly know why you eat one meal a day. Stuff like that sticks with you. But for the average person that has never been in that kind of danger for an extended period of time, it's really hard.
Well, and that's where the PTSD comes in, which we'll be talking about PTSD and the suicide rates here in the second hour. Cole, you got anything to add?
Not really to that
one. Don?
No, I haven't. I'm surprised I don't hear too many stories about poisoned food. That's one thing I was worried about down there, but luckily I didn't have anything like that happen to me.
Blood was so when we were in Telefar. Honestly, I think you saw more outside the wire than we did. Obviously, Telefar before we took over back in 04-05, Telefar was a training base for the insurgents. And of course, there's a big sweep. They cleaned up most of the insurgents, but I can't remember if it was you or one of the other soldiers in our group that talked about they're dropping IEDs from cement trucks and dump trucks and things like that. So they're essentially creating rolling explosives.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I think it was Nye. I think Nye.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah.
So again, for our civilians that are listening, an IED is an improvised explosive device. They would put those in dead animals, lay them alongside the road. They put them in something as small as a pop can. leave them in the middle or next to the road. They put them in the back of cars. You'd have, I don't know, howitzer rounds stuffed into the trunk of a car, and they detonate it. And those are IEDs. Fortunately, and hopefully you will never see them on American soil. So, did you have military in your life growing up, and did that influence your decision to join the military? Don?
For me, yeah, my dad was in the Air Force, and so I kind of had an inkling about like how the military worked. And I was also, while I was in high school, I was in JROTC. So I kind of had that was with the Army. So I was kind of in my formative years as an adult. I grew into the Army, and that's why I subsequently joined the Army.
How about you, Emery? Did you have any military influence growing up? Is Emery frozen again? I believe Emery's frozen
Oh,
again.
no, he's mute, I think.
There you are. I think you're muted. We can't hear you, Emery.
So we can see him on Skype, but
Yeah,
we can't hear him.
So Emery's on video, but we can't hear him talking.
You'd make one heck of a mime.
So while we try to figure out what's going on with Emery's communication there, so my dad was Navy for 4 years, long before I was born. My aunt was military or an Army dental assistant long before I was born. I had no military family immediate my entire life. One day, a recruiter called. I was 19, 20. I had no idea what the hell I was going to do with my life, kind of like you, Don. And this Army recruiter calls up and he says, "Hey, we'd like you to come down and look at our programs." And well, yeah, I joined.
Yeah, we got you back, Emery.
All right.
I don't regret it. Anyway, Emery, did you have any kind of military influence growing up?
Almost none. I had an uncle that joined the Air Force in, I want to say 53, and he retired as a lieutenant colonel in Air Force intelligence in, I want to say 74. So really interesting time to be in Air Force intelligence, trying to spy on the Russians, on the USSR, and being alive during McCarthyism. And pretty much most of the Cold War. So I had some interesting stories from him, but no, not much of a military influence. So I've always been the black sheep. I've always been I have brothers and sisters that are in the legal profession, so I'm the one that I don't make money. I do this crazy mental health work where I help people for almost nothing, and then I'm in the Army. So whatever I do, I'm the black sheep. I'm just kind of out there doing my own thing, which is okay with me.
Right. I fully agree. So we're not going to bring up religion unless you want to, because.
Oh yeah, I'm an openly practicing Wiccan in the Army. I'm a distinctive religious group leader, TRGL, for pagan and Wiccan soldiers stationed at Camp Humphreys. As you know, I did that in Afghanistan too.
Yep.
So yeah, it's fair game.
Okay, so does being Wiccan with your family make you a black sheep as well, or are they open to your belief?
About half and half.
Okay. Fair.
So half family are cool with it, half we don't talk about it. But I think that's a pretty common experience for a lot of people.
And what, Minnie? Go ahead.
At least none of them are like, I'm going to put you on a stick and light you on fire. So,
right?
You know, I'm my dad's only child, so that definitely works in my favor.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we're not going to. Tonight is a veteran show, so we're not going to get into the religious side, unless it looks that way. But I will say being pagan in the military does make a dual fight because most of your military are evangelicals. A good majority of them are, and they like to, one, proselytize and to persecute. Seen it personally, and so it really sucks being a veteran when you are dealing with that. You're only there to serve your country, not serve somebody else's religion. Um, so this is kind of an interesting. Who is your biggest hero in the military, if you have one? You're sighing. You have to think about it.
Well, so Colin Powell has so much integrity. He's willing to admit when he's wrong. He's willing to be humble. He's willing to take a stand and say things even if they're not politically convenient. So a tremendous amount of respect for him. I think former Secretary of Defense Mattis was great. He was a little more hawkish than I am personally, but again, lots of integrity, led by example, very humble. So we've had a couple of recent really wonderful secretaries. I've served under some great commanders. I can remember I was in Afghanistan as a lieutenant and was going through a divorce, and I had a company commander sit down with me, a captain, because my now ex had made some accusations, and I just remember how understanding he was on a human level, and I can remember him saying, it's good that I'm going through some of these hard things because when I'm a commander someday, or I'm in charge of soldiers that are also going through hard things in life, I will be able to relate. I'll be able to have more empathy for soldiers going through things. So I have met really wonderful leaders and people at all levels. And I side because it's pretty hard for me to pick just one.
Okay, no, fair enough. How about you, Don? Was there any military leader or even another soldier that stands out that you idolized at all?
No, that would probably be my JROTC instructor, Sergeant Holder. He never backed down. He was always consistent there, and he really pushed you to be better. And to be honest, I thought taking his class in high school was much more difficult than going to basic training. He helped prepare me for it and everything else like that. So that was my biggest influence in the military was him.
Okay, good.
It's funny how the people we very first meet in the military and the impressions they make really stick with us. Because I had a similar experience. I had an Army recruiter, Staff Sergeant retired James Dinola. He was a field artillery guy, and he hated his job. He absolutely hated being a recruiter. He was recruiting because his hearing was shot. He had reconstructive surgery to, I think, his hand and his wrist due to being blown up while driving somewhere in Iraq, and he was in a recruiting station in Colorado, Westminster, Colorado, and absolutely hated every moment of it. But he was a professional, and he had incredible work ethic. So as a result of his professionalism and can-do attitude and work ethic, he recruited the most soldiers every month. So every month in his little recruiting station, he was the recruiter of the month. And I'll just never forget this example of this kind of like grizzled, beat up, damaged staff sergeant that hated his desk job, but by God, he was going to do it to the very best of his ability. And not only that, he was going to kick the crap out of all the other recruiters while he did it. And that was what he did. And I'll never forget him.
Oh, that reminds me of Sergeant Major Plumley, and we were soldiers.
Yeah. And the actor, what was his name? The actor that played him?
I don't remember now.
The actor, I read that he took his character and being in character so seriously that from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to sleep, he stayed in character, whether they were filming or not, at all times.
No, wait,
So
that was Sam Elliott, I think, wasn't it,
yeah,
Cole? Yeah, that was Sam Elliott that played Sergeant Major Plumley.
yeah. So he kept that demeanor of that just very serious nonsense. Don't try to joke with me, and I eat babies for breakfast. That attitude he kept in character all day.
Well, I'm going to tell
Uh,
you a story because the actual Sergeant Major Plumley was just like that. There was an NCO in Beanock that had to write a story of or do a paper on their most uh, respected leader, and he chose Sergeant Major Plumley, and he called Sergeant Major Plumley for an interview, and Sergeant Major Plumley actually told him to f off and hung up on him. He was just like that. So yeah, Sam Elliott actually pulled that off really well. Um, so I guess the leader I enjoyed the most would be Tommy Franks. General Franks, I served under in Third Army back in '99 to 2001. Now that was a leader that led by example. That was a leader that was actually when the unit was out doing PT, would be out
Mhm.
doing PT with us. He would be running on
Yeah,
base with us. And you'd
yeah.
see Tommy Frank's wife walking the dog every morning, waving at the unit as we went running by. But that was a leader, a general that would come out and actually run with us.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, that's one memorable general that I do remember.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what happened to him. I know there was some kind of corrupt crap that they threw him under the bus. But I don't believe any of it because, well, I served with General Franks. And what's in too, I'd like to meet him, but Robert Gates, the old Secretary of Defense from the 90s, is actually here locally to us, and I haven't met him yet. Like to go pick, like to go pick his brain
Yeah.
about some of the issues we've got here. So moving along, okay, I have to watch the time. We actually have a Sam Elliott speech for the top of the hour during our break. He's Sam Elliott's one actor. You know, I'm not big on meeting actors. I really don't care. They put their pants on like we do. But Sam Elliott is actually one actor I wouldn't mind meeting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So moving along, this is kind of a scenario-based question. If you haven't experienced it yet, and you won't, Emery, but which would you choose, drill sergeant or recruiting, and why?
Oh God. Oh shit. So I was in a recruiting battalion as the S1. So I was think of me as the senior human resource manager for a battalion. So the way I relate this to civilians is imagine a car company, and let's say you've got dealerships spread throughout about 3 states, and you work in the regional management office for all these dealerships spread out all over the case. So I was that guy doing all the human resources stuff for all the car salesmen spread throughout New England. So Maine, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, except instead of selling cars, we had people out there recruiting people into the United States Army. But you know, the marketing and the advertising strategies were very similar.
Right.
So I've been around recruiting a lot. And then I've been stationed at Fort Jackson a couple times, where the U.S. Army Drill Sergeant School is, and then of course experienced drill sergeants firsthand as a basic recruit. So they call being a drill sergeant being on the trail, and there's no fun nickname for being a recruiter. So there's nothing comparable. I don't know. I got to tell you that most people have no idea how difficult either of those positions are, because as a drill sergeant, I watched my sergeant first class, he was in charge of my little basic training platoon. I watched his marriage completely fall apart while he was a recruiter. I think they give you an extra $200 or $300, or not as a recruiter, as a drill sergeant. They give you a little bit of extra cash to try to compensate you for the extra hours you put in. Absolutely not enough. I don't know if any amount of money is enough, because you work insane hours, weekends, and you're in charge. You've got a small team of like you, and if you're the senior drill sergeant, then you got 2 junior drill sergeants under you. It's like like a senior supervisor and then 2 junior supervisors, and you're responsible for this platoon of fuck ups. Like, think about Stripes with Bill Murray and John Candy, and Ramus, that kind of thing, 24/7 for like 7 weeks. So they work so long hours. They'll get a crew from start to finish through basic training, and then they'll have like 2 or 3 days off, and then it starts again. And they do this for like 2 years, and it's good for their careers in the sense that it looks very good on the resume going forward for advancement, but it is absolutely hell on marriages and families.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
hands down, hands down. And the divorce. I know I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know damn well that the divorce rate for recruiting, well, not recruiting, drill sergeants, and I'm sure recruiting as well, because even recruiters work long hours. Got to take this recruit here, and picture a drill sergeant basically running a daycare. That,
Yeah.
And as an E5, I had 13 soldiers I was responsible for, and that was bad enough. I can't imagine being a drill with what, 200?
So I started basic training in late May. So my platoon was mostly 17-year-old guys and gals. So they were juniors in high school. So they signed up for the military. They're following their junior year of high school. They went to basic training, and then they were going to go back home, finish their senior year of high school, and then go on to their job-specific MOS training after that. So I was 30 years old with a platoon of 17-year-olds. So that was lots of fun. On the recruiting side, relating this to like a high-pressure sales job, you've got a quota. You've got to sell a certain amount of cars every month. As a recruiter, you've got a quota. You've got to recruit a certain amount of soldiers every month to meet your quota. And there is a lot of pressure to succeed. And so it's a...
Right.
And we lost you again, Emery. Oh, let's see here. So, Don, recruiting or drill sergeant?
Getting around Brown would always be kind of really cool, but like they said, that would be a lot of hours, because I never, even when I was in basic training, I had all right for the drill sergeants just because we were messing up on and how late they had to stay up and doing CQ and fire watch. That there's a lot. I would probably fit better with, just simply because it's comfortable. It's in an office, and yes, the hours might be long, but they're not as long as and arduous, I should say, as being a drill sergeant.
Totally agree. So they tried to select me for recruiting. We got back from Balad 0405. I got the letter and was told, oh, you're going to go to recruiting school, you're going to be a recruiter, and you have to go see the psychiatrist for your psych eval. And I pretty much told the psychiatrist, no, you get me out of this one way or the other, but my job's not to get kids in the Army, it's to get kids home from war. That's what I do. They tried to argue with me, and, well, the colonel got his ass chewed because I didn't show up for recruiting school. I was already in Iraq again. But they were supposed to have dropped me. and the command was told I was dropped. So it wasn't anybody's fault, but whoever does the paperwork to drop soldiers. So
Yeah.
I never got any repercussions because the colonel was like, he's already in Iraq again. So suck it up, Buttercup. Um,
Yeah.
but I know have too many brothers in arms that got selected for recruiting. They didn't get out of it, and just like you said, if you don't make your quota, that can be a career killer. And they diagnosed him with PTSD while he was recruiting, and that
Hmm.
killed his career.
Hmm.
They forced him out, which is probably good in the long run for him. But that's no. I wouldn't choose either one. My job's not to get kids in the army. High press salesman or not, no.
So, I'll play devil's advocate on both sides here for a second.
Hmm.
Um, the advantage is, looking at this from the spouse perspective. Your husband or wife or partner is not in Iraq. They are going to be home every night. So there's some peace of mind in that.
Right.
Um, the other the other thing is, if you are more of an introvert, if you are not used to speaking in front of people, recruiting can be a great thing because it will get you out of your comfort zone. It will build muscles that you're not used to using. Because as a recruiter, you have to talk to strangers. You have to give presentations. You have to meet community leaders. You represent the Army. And so often people that go in as introverts, when they do their 2 years and they go back to the regular units, they are better communicators and they are stronger speakers and they're better at giving presentations. So that can be a good thing.
This is true, but I had to have speech in the degree I'm on right now, and being an online course, I had to make a video and have a buddy hold the camera and whatnot. And yeah, talking about paranormal for 2 minutes and no longer, yeah, that was rough. Uh, so next question, and before I ask this question, I want to explain to our listeners that I'm not an ingrate. I know where your heart is and I know where you're coming from, but I think this term is overused. So I want to hear you guys' input. How do you feel? It's Veterans Day. When someone walks up to you and thanks you for your service.
I'll let Cole take that one first while I compose myself.
Well, that's in my blurb that I want to say.
I know, and go ahead and read your blurb. And if we have to come back to this question in the next hour, we will. But I want to talk about this. I want to talk about patriotism in this country. I want to talk about how us as veterans feel about this country.
Okay. So last week I saw something on Facebook and it kind of, I'm just going to say it pissed me right off.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the week, calmed down, and sat down tonight and wrote something. It's called Lest We Forget. These three words that the modern world has used to describe something of our history's most brutal and horrible events. The definition of the word lest is with the intention of preventing. Unfortunately, we as a society have forgotten what we are supposed to be preventing, or even worse, we stopped caring. Veterans Day, or Remembrance Day in Canada and Britain, was originally called Armistice Day and celebrated the world over. It was so named because on November 11th, 1918, the final armistice was signed that ended all fighting on land, sea, and air in World War I. This is a day to celebrate those that have dedicated their lives to protecting our freedom and our families. I have often been told that by joining the service, this is not just a job or a career, it is a family. I have never understood why America celebrates the separation of the living vets and those that didn't make it home. This is why when I say to a soldier, thank you for your service, I am not just saying thank you for them, but thank you to their family and what they have lost, so my kids can play at the park and go to school. I have noticed a new trend of late. Different organizations have taken it upon themselves to change a symbol used in recognition of the service members lost. The poppy stands for a lot of different aspects of what was lost in the wars our ancestors fought. The red represents the blood spilt on the battlefield. The black center represents the family members left behind. And the green leaf represents the fields that have grown over the trenches and battlements in wars past. These organizations have been changing these colors or adding sports teams to them. Although this may not seem like a big deal to many people, it is detrimental to the onslaught of the memory of these events and the people that gave their lives. The words, lest we forget, need to be taught as a lesson of remembrance, and not just a day off for some and shopping deals for others. This is a day to teach the future generations to be better than we are, to respect the things that matter, and to never forget the past. For as the old saying goes, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. Just my 2 cents.
Excellently spoken. And I got to give kudos to the Cedaroli School District because, I went to my grandson's, he asked me to come to his Veterans Day assembly, and I did. And they actually did a student-led play about the history of, and they included the Armistice Day. They got it well. So kudos to the Cedaroli School District. I think with the media, and I think with the televising of wars, and we're going to embed reporters in with this unit, and war and the violence of war is such a common thing ever since the Iraq wars in Afghanistan that people don't understand the boots we wear. What's your thoughts, Emery?
It's awfully hard to come after Cole because that was beautiful and it was really well said and captured a lot. When I first joined the Army, people would come up to me in the airport and say thank you for your service, and I would be appreciative. And then after a couple years, and especially after I got back from my deployment, people would say it, and I would get pissed off and angry. Because I just felt like, I don't know, like people just really didn't know. People really had no idea what it was like for me to miss, the second year of my son's life from when he was 1 to when he was 2. And people really didn't understand what it was like to come back when he was 2 years old, and absolutely, he did not recognize me. He had no recognition. I had to completely build a relationship with my son from scratch, a child that I had walked to sleep and fed every night. So, man, I don't know. It's a pretty loaded question. You got me there. These days, I think I have a lot more patience for people. When people say it to me, I understand that they genuinely mean it. They're saying and doing something in their mind that, they're trying to express some appreciation. And that's, that it's getting, and now it's able.
But that's what's pissing me off. It's gotten to the point where I've seen a kid ask their mom, why do you say that to them? And she said, because that's just what you say.
Yeah.
Like, that in itself, that kid's going to grow up to believe that.
Like, it's just a good manners thing.
A lot of people don't agree with most of the things I do with my kids. And one of them is I made them watch Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
The youngest one was 8. I don't care. They need to know.
Yeah.
They need to know that this stuff is still happening.
It's interesting. You had this experience with an elementary school. I had a similar experience on the very opposite coast in Maine at my kids' elementary school, where they did a really nice whole musical presentation for Veterans Day. So, so you find pockets of grade school teachers who get it on some level and care on some level and try to impart that knowledge on the children. It's cool to see.
What's your thoughts, Don?
I kind of agree with everyone that's kind of said it's been lip service. It's become a cultural norm. So it makes me just feel awkward because, like, okay, is it true or is it something that you're just telling me? And it makes me doubt everyone that I meet that says something like that.
Well, here's my issue. I don't consider it service. That's just my opinion. Having done 4 combat tours, that to me wasn't service. That was to me was doing my job. So yeah, you've got the other ones that we didn't belong in Iraq. So who are you protecting? And I'm sure you got the same in Afghanistan, Emery. But we answer the call when our commander-in-chief tells us to go. We go. For me, it was bringing my soldiers home. That was my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was said, and I hate this movie. I despise this movie. I can't watch this movie. But Black Hawk Down said it perfectly, and that was from the Delta Force guy. I can't remember his name, but he said it's for the guy next to you. And Somalia is one I don't talk about. Cole's heard my stories, and Cole's probably the only one that will ever hear my stories. We just have a bond. We have that trust. But I really got woken up flying home from Somalia when we're on. There's civilians on the airplane we're on, and we're wearing UN berets because that's what we were given to go home with, because the UN took back over, essentially. But these civilians looked at us and, oh, what army are you guys with? And I kind of looked down at my U.S. Army patch and said, we're U.S. Army. Oh, where are you guys going? And, awkward silence because we're going home. Oh, where are you going home from? Somalia. Where is that at? Like, are you freaking serious? So, yeah, I think the whole thing is lost. I really do. And not to say I don't appreciate the words they say, I do. It's just, to me, it's very awkward because it's not service to me. I did it to protect my kids. I did it to protect my family. I did it to protect the country. And when it comes to the oath takers, there we go, not oath breakers. The groups that form because they want to protect the Constitution, the Constitution's being torn apart every day. So what are they really protecting? Where's the service in that?
Well, the biggest issue I have there is the Constitution is a big thing that everyone talks about. But the one I always hear, because I'm a Canadian living in the United States, is the Bill of Rights. Both of our countries have a Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. All of our forefathers dropped the fucking ball. It shouldn't be a Bill of Rights. It should be a Bill of Rights and Responsibilities. we have a responsibility to teach our kids right from wrong. And that includes how you treat elders and the people who have served. We lost that because it wasn't in the Bill of Rights. It wasn't part of what we have to do. But that's the thing. We do have to do these things in order to receive these rights. We do have to. You can't kill someone. You do that, you lose your rights. That should be in that frickin' paper. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I fully agree. What's your thoughts, Emery?
Emery, are you gone again? Where you keep going?
What's your thoughts, Don? I think Emery froze up again.
On the Constitution and everything, I don't know. I mean, I'm agreeing with everything that's being said, so I'm kind of like trying to find a way to counter anything you guys have been saying. But no, I agree with you guys that it has been torn apart, and I agree with the Bill of Rights and Responsibilities thing. It's something that we're lacking for sure.
So I'm not sure if you heard that, Emery, but what's your thoughts
Yeah.
on our Constitution and the way it's being trampled on today? And that's what we're supposed to be fighting for. And I just lost Skype. So I think, well, I'm getting Skype back. Let's see if I can get Skype back real quick, and then we'll go to our first break. Skype is just being a pain tonight, and everyone is probably still on. I just keep getting dropped. So here we go. Momentarily. While Skype
Our military would work, and then she goes forth and really takes a critical look at, you know, every president and every Congress since Nixon, and how America has gotten more and more detached from our active duty army. And in the 90s, you know, Bill Clinton got around having to call up the Guard and call up the National Guard and the Reserve by using our small active duty military force and a lot of contractors in Somalia and Bosnia. So it sounds like Eric experienced that. And as a result, the average American didn't have to really sacrifice anything. They didn't have to leave their job and be activated and go forth and go to war. And the economy was doing well, so we didn't have war bonds like my grandmother did during World War II. You know, so it's not real surprising to me that there is a huge disconnect between the sacrifices we make and the places we go, and, you know, your average person on the street who has no idea that we have soldiers in Somalia, or even where or what Somalia is.
Well, you see, when we first got ordered to Somalia, it was supposed to be a humanitarian aid mission. That's what we were being sent over for. We were an ambulance company. So as soon as our plane landed, the bullets were flying. And it turned from humanitarian aid straight to combat. And of course, everybody knows the story from there. So it is time to take our first break. You're going to be listening to Sam Elliott and his tribute to Sergeant Ray Lambert on the 2019 National Memorial Day. So when we come back, we will carry on our conversation. Stay tuned.
Here to tell Sergeant Lambert's story is this year's Academy Award nominated actor, Sam Elliott.
We were headed to Omaha Beach, and I was glad. After all the fighting in Africa and Sicily, I just wanted to get this war over with. It was daylight on the 6th. I went up on deck and found my brother Bill there. We talked about our chances and what our parents would think. About 6 a.m., the signal came to go to stations. My brother and I promised whoever survived would take care of the other's family. And we shook hands and went our separate ways. I climbed down the nets and got into the Higgins boat with my unit. On the way in, we could hear the battleships firing and see the big shells landing ahead of us. Guys were getting sick and vomiting from the choppy water and the diesel fumes. As we got in closer, the Germans had a bird's eye view of us coming in. We picked up machine gun fire. The bullets clanged against the metal ramp of the boat like hail. Then the big 88s on the hill opened up. Every time a shell whistled overhead, all you could hear was the sound of a banshee screaming. Boats around us were burning. I saw men on fire. Even their shoes were on fire. Dead and wounded were floating in the water. We had orders not to stop and pick anyone up. I told my men, when the ramp drops, hit the water hard and keep as low as you can to dodge the bullets. We sank up over our heads. That was the last time I saw most of them. 31 men jumped off that boat. Just 7 of them made it to the beach. The only cover was a block of concrete the Germans had failed to clear. That's where I set up a collection point for the casualties. Medics were trained not to dig in. We were there to see the troops and for them to see us. I detailed Corporal Raymond Lepore to hunker down and treat the men while I brought in the injured. Ray and I had been together since '39. I knew I could count on him. It was total confusion. Shells exploding, boats blowing up, people yelling because they couldn't hear anything, machine gun bullets hitting the water all around you, the roar of the boats coming in. It's like you're all alone in a world of 1 million people because you're concentrating on what you have to do. Hadn't gone far when I felt a bullet go through my right arm. I just kept going. I was thinking of only one thing, getting to the men who needed me. There was a soldier laying right on the edge of the water. One arm was almost shot off. Every time a wave would come in, that arm would be pulled back out to sea, and he'd try to reach out for it. The first thing you're supposed to do is keep a wounded man from going into shock. But he was too far gone. Nothing I could do for him. He died in my arms. I was on my way to treat another soldier when a piece of shrapnel the size of my hand tore a hole in my left thigh. I put a tourniquet on it, gave myself a shot of morphine, and went back to work. You did the job you were trained to do. If you didn't, you died. I could feel my right arm going numb from the first bullet. Saw a guy struggling in chest-deep water. Grabbed him with my good arm just as a Higgins boat rolled in and dropped its ramp. The ramp hit me right in the back, crushed 2 vertebrae, and pushed us both to the bottom. That's when I started talking to the one guy I knew could help me. I said, God, I've asked you many times, but just give me another chance. Let me save one more person. And for some reason, that boat raised its ramp and backed out. Somehow I managed to drag his boat to safety. I told Corporal Lepore he'd have to take my place. He stood up, and then he just collapsed against my shoulder. His helmet fell off, and I saw the hole right in the center. Everything went black after that. The next thing I knew, I was on a boat going back to England. A Navy doctor looked at my dog tags and he told me, we have another Lambert here. My brother's Bill's stretcher was put right next to mine on the dock at Weymouth. He'd been on the beach with G Company. We went to the hospital in the same ambulance. When I woke up, he was on the cot next to me. He looked over and said, what are you doing here? Same thing you are, I told him. And he said, oh God, Now what's Mother gonna think? We both made it out okay. We'll live to be 92. People who have never been in a war should understand what soldiers give up. The guys we left on Omaha Beach never had a chance to live the lives they've dreamed of. Day hasn't gone by when I haven't prayed for the men we lost and their families. I still wake up at night sometimes thinking about the guys. Every man that walked into those machine guns and that artillery fire on Omaha Beach that day, every man was a hero. What kind of person would I be if I didn't tell their stories? Such an honor. Such an honor, sir, to tell your story. God bless you.
And welcome back to S4. Hope you enjoyed that. Great commemoration. You're listening to the S4, the voice of the dark side of the paranormal and conspiratorial. Make sure you check our website, Spreaker site, and on the S4 YouTube channel for all the shows you've missed. And back to our show. So, you were talking during the break about base closures, Emery.
Right. So we were talking about people being disconnected from the whole military experience, and what we've done since 1990 is good in that we realign and consolidate our resources. So what this means is instead of having lots and lots of little air bases and army forts and naval bases all over the country, we have a few very large bases where we consolidate and we move a bunch of units to. So it's good in the sense that it saves taxpayers a lot of money by having a few larger locations than lots of small locations all over. It means we have larger bases and forts, which is great for training, exercises, and et cetera. But one of the kind of unforeseen consequences is that most of our active duty military forces are concentrated in just a few large mega bases. And as a result, the average person around America doesn't really come into contact with military personnel at all in just their day-to-day lives because, like, let's say you live in Colorado. Unless you live in Colorado Springs, you're not really going to run into any Air Force or Army personnel. Unless you live, in Washington State around JBLM, you're not really going to run into anybody. So, really, most people aren't in contact with anything military related in their day-to-day lives like they used to be.
The only time they see military is something negative or we're going somewhere on the news. That's it. It's all media controlled now.
Well, or Hollywood, it's just like being in the Wiccan or pagan community. Unfortunately, people's experience are what they see in movies and TV, and it's the same with the military.
Oh yeah, everybody in the military is rich. Did you know that? They all get new cars and they all yeah, really? I've actually been asked that.
They get new cars and they're going to debt.
It's because of all the money we have, we bank, thousands of dollars a month. Yeah. And nothing against the civilian population, but talk to someone. Just like, we're not going to go on a rant here. Okay, next question. Do you believe our military is properly trained for today's missions?
As much as possible. The old adage is we're always training for the last war. So that's the old saying. I genuinely think that our Army and our military leadership do their absolute best to constantly evolve the training that we're given based on the current information. So, for example, we went through a period of time with Iraq and Afghanistan where we really focused on smaller unit combat. Smaller unit being being able to take 3,000 to 5,000 soldiers and plug and play them where we needed. And the training was very much on clearing out rooms. Urban warfare, looking for vehicle improvised explosive devices, explosives that were hidden in the under the hood of a vehicle or underneath a car. And that was absolutely appropriate training for the war we fought in Iraq and what we're still doing in Afghanistan. And going forward, I've talked to some recent human resource officers that have come out of training, and we're shifting gears and shifting towards more large-scale engagements, preparing for the possibility of being in a fight with really large militaries like China or Russia. So I do think our leaders do their absolute best to adjust the training we received based on what the current threats are.
And that's good to hear. That's excellent to hear. And I had a question, but I lost it. So this is near and dear to my heart, and kind of to Don's. I'm not sure if you didn't have the Kurds in Afghanistan; they were Iraqi and Syrian. But how did you feel about our betrayal of our Kurdish allies? It pissed me off. I'll be completely honest. Stabbing our Kurdish allies in the back, having met a lot of Kurdish when we were in Talifar, really took a part of my soul. Are you still with us, Emery?
I am. So, I got to say that the president is following through on campaign promises he made, which was to scale back and not be involved in stuff that we didn't need to be. That said, the Kurds in northern Iraq are a shining example of a stable, democratic, law-abiding, healthy culture and society. And it would be in our, meaning the United States, best security interest to encourage and support that in any way we can. And unfortunately, it didn't align with Syria's politics. It didn't align with Turkey's politics. And for whatever reason, our president decided that the politics in Syria and Turkey were more of a priority. And so here we are. And as active duty military, I am sworn to obey the officers appointed over me and the President of the United States. But I can tell you that if you dig into the culture and the society of the Kurds, I think we would find they're much more in line with our American values than a lot of those other actors in the region. And I'll leave it at that. How was that?
That was perfect. Because yeah, they were great people. They were a great culture. And what he did was basically allow one of our allies to attack another one of our allies. And because the Kurds were allies, so was Turkey.
Yeah.
And, it was, to me, disgusting. But I've also got friends in Turkey that are Turkish Special Forces. So, that was a really hard one when I heard that news.
Yeah.
So, next question kind of goes along with the, not the last one, but the one before. Do you feel our military is equipped to handle today's enemy?
It depends.
And for our listeners, if you can see Emery's face, he's thinking.
Who is today's enemy?
Well,
Because
that's the question. We don't know who today's enemy is.
Right. So for the last 20 years, the enemy has been non-state or non-nation state actors. And for listeners that have not studied political science, that means terrorists. That means groups of people that are not a country, but are rather a group of people with some kind of political or ideological or religious goal that they want to achieve, and they're not a country. So it'd be ISIS or the Taliban or Al Qaeda or Hamas used to be. They're not anymore, but you get the idea, right? Yeah. So who are you defining as today's enemy? Is my question.
Well, that's the million-dollar question. Who's the next one that's going to stand up and attack us? What about China?
You know, I have to refer to the book 1984 because just the premise of the question says that there is some kind of external threat that we need to be ready for. As there's a boogeyman, there's an external threat that we need to be ready for. We will do anything as a country we'll sacrifice anything as a country to be ready and prepare for it. And I've been to China, and let me tell you, Chinese people were really nice to me when I was there. The Chinese people I hung out with told me stories about graveyards of American soldiers that were buried on Chinese soil because they went there and they defended China against the Japanese during World War II. And they were so grateful to me as an American because other Americans had went there and died and sacrificed to defend China against Japan. And it's 2019, and this stuff happened in the 1940s. So, we're talking about 60 or 70 years ago, but people, as an American, people still express that gratitude towards me. So, I guess I would say I don't necessarily agree with the premise of the question, and that maybe the world is not as scary as we're led to believe.
And I fully agree. You have to go by what media portrays. I think China's biggest threat is actually when it comes to cybersecurity. There'll be more cyber attacks, and they're not going to do a physical attack. I don't ever see that happening. If it is a physical, it's going to be a missile launch to North Korea. But honestly, yeah, I would agree with you. And Trip is saying dead air, and we're still live. I think he needs to refresh. Next question. How do you feel about?
It's still a good question. Are we prepared? And I don't know. I mean, I try to keep up on the F-35 debacle with our fighter jets and our Air Force, and I always see news articles comparing, does our U.S. fighter compare with the Russian fighter, compare with the Chinese stealth fighter, bomber, whatever. And, I wish that we took as much interest in our healthcare and our education as we did in our military. But what can I say?
I know you're limited. You're limited to what you could say. So Don, what do you think about all that?
It's heavy. It's a lot. As far as if we're ready for the next thing that comes along, I'm not sure. I don't know how we would be ready because you're never ready for a sucker punch. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. we have more terrorism on our own soil that's non-Islamic, which Islamic's always been seen as the big threat. Are they actually going to come on our soil and attack? I don't see it. I see more radicals on our own soil that are American-based than I do Islam issues. The biggest Islam issue you're gonna have are lone wolf attacks that are sympathizers. And that's not even that's a proven fact. Um, would you agree with that assessment too, Emery? Has Emery left the building?
Sorry, I'm back.
You are back.
All right, I didn't catch it. Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
So, Islamophobia is such a big thing. And like I was saying a second ago, I see more terrorist threat on our own soil with domestic terrorism than I do with another Islamic attack on this soil. The only Islamic threats are lone wolf sympathizers, caught with propaganda. But we have neo-Nazis, we have white nationalists, we have a lot more issues here on our own soil that's not Islamic.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Yeah, no, I think white supremacy and neo-Nazism in the United States is a huge threat to our national security. I think the FBI would agree with that statement. And but again, I have to refer back to 1984.
Right. Oh, it reminds me of, and Ronald Reagan's statement of I would take an external threat, and he mentioned the terrestrials. That would be an external threat, obviously, to the world, and that it would take something like that to pull all nations together.
Yeah. As a social worker, I'm trained to kind of see the glass as half empty, because when you can really look at a country or a system and see the things that need to change and be fixed, then it's you get energy, you get excited about making things better, about fixing things, about trying to improve on what we have, and that's great. And so I think it's maybe a little more comfortable for people to see a terrorist threat being external, being people that maybe don't speak our language, maybe believe in a different religion, that look differently than we do. And it's maybe a little harder to imagine terrorist threats from people that are Americans, are Caucasian, are English speaking. And that's that's tough. But I think that threat is absolutely real. Just Google Black church arson, for example, and you'll find a swath of Black churches that have been burned to the ground in the last few years all across the South. And it's really sad, and it's really heartbreaking.
Well, it's just like Tripp is saying in the chat room. Sad we're deporting soldiers. It's so I'm not going to bring up the immigration issue, because that's not what we're talking about tonight. But when it used to be in the military, if someone wanted to be a citizen, they could join the military and get their citizenship. Not sure if that's changed, but now you've got their families getting deported when they're deployed.
So I put my recruiting hat on for a second. I was in U.S. Army Recruiting Command just a couple years ago. And when I was there, if an applicant, meaning someone here visiting our country but not a citizen, an applicant that was applying for the U.S. military, if they were here on a current and approved visa, then they could apply to join the military and then enter in a program where they would be naturalized by providing military service. About midway through my time in U.S. Army recruiting, that changed, and policy changed to where that was no longer the case. And, it just happened that policy change coincided with a new president being elected. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. I have not been in U.S. Army Recruiting Command in a couple of years, though, so it may have changed back since I've been gone. I don't know. But when I was there, we did see that shift, and that is rather disappointing. And limiting to our, I hope that policy has changed since I've been in Korea, because a lot of times what you have with these applicants is you have someone born in another country who's maybe been studying or working here, who's learned English, and now they're bilingual or sometimes trilingual. And that can be a real resource and a real benefit to our military, to have someone that speaks another language that can come in, become a soldier, and then immediately become a translator. So it's really, really helpful. So that's my 2 cents.
Excellent, excellent. So, how do you feel? Hold on. What was your most memorable experience since you've been in or were in?
Boy, as a human resource officer, it's not very exciting. I'm sorry. I really am. When I was in Afghanistan, I met a lot of people that did not want us to leave, and they were small business owners in Kabul, or they were teachers, and they wanted their daughters to be able to learn how to read, or be allowed to learn how to read, and they didn't want us to go. So that was memorable. When I was in Kabul, there was this wonderful organization called Women for Afghan Women, and they are the feminist movement of Afghanistan, and they're incredibly brave. They run shelters for women that are fleeing or on the run from abusive husbands. In their shelter, they also accept children whose mothers have been imprisoned for disobeying their husbands. And so myself and a small group of Navy and sailors and airmen, we collected donations from people in the U.S. of clothes, hygiene products, toys, school supplies, etc. And we would drop them off at the administrative office for Women for Afghan Women in Kabul, and then those supplies would get distributed to their safe houses. And it was really inspiring to meet these women doing this incredible work in a country where, just by doing this work, they put their own lives in danger every day. And they did it without the body armor that I wore. They did it without the M4 and 9mm Beretta that I wore. And they either walked to work or drove to work, not in the armored vehicles with bulletproof glass that I had, but in just, their regular cars and scooters. So meeting them was really inspiring. And it reminded me in a lot of ways in the struggle that women had in our own country over 100 years ago, trying to get basic things like basic equal protection under the law, the basic right to vote, basic rights to hold official office, all the things right now that they're struggling and fighting for in Afghanistan. And so I guess that would be my moment, the women that I met in Women for Afghan Women.
And, that actually reminds me, too, when we were in Balad, our battalion raised school supply drives in the States for the schools in Iraq. And it was kind of a pain because once the insurgents found out that they were taking supplies from the Americans, they would actually attack the schools.
Yeah.
So a lot of the schools wouldn't take our supplies because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I read a great article on a woman who was building schools for girls in Afghanistan, but she would do it in a village in someone's house, and they would build in, like if you've seen the movie Star Wars, you remember in the Millennium Falcon how Han Solo and Chewie, they had a hidden compartment in the floor of the Falcon where they would smuggle supplies. Well, it's actually the same thing in some villages in Afghanistan, is they have these floorboards that remove and these hiding spaces in the ground. Either that or they'll have multiple concealed emergency exits in which the female students can quickly flee if the Taliban is spotted coming into town, so that these classrooms for girls can be evacuated so that Taliban doesn't find a group of girls learning how to read.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Don, what is your most memorable experience while you were a Cav Scout?
That is actually easy. When I was, and it's kind of heartwarming because there was one time where we were clearing out an entire village. We're coming in and we're busting down doors. We're doing our thing. We're being all aggressive and everything. We got the men and women separated, and I'm in the courtyard with the women from security, and I have my right hand on my trigger, but my left hand was hanging down, and all of a sudden, I feel this little baby hand come into my hand. And I look down, and there's this little 2-year-old that's just like holding my hand, and it was very moving. So that's my story.
And so many civilians don't understand. We've been to Iraq, we've been to Somalia, we've deployed to these countries, and the kids, are it. I don't know. It's hard to even explain. Hard for most people to even fathom. But yeah, the kids make deployments usually a lot more enjoyable. So Cole, do you have any memorable experiences when you were a Sea Cadet?
Oh, yeah. So, for those of you that don't know, Sea Cadets, I didn't serve, to be honest. Sea Cadets is a club that I joined as a teenager. It is like, think Boy Scouts or ROTC. You do sign paperwork with the Department of Defense, but it's not quite. We never went through drill sergeants or anything like that. We did have full-out training. We did go on to bases. My most memorable time with them. So, like I said, I was just part of the Sea Cadets, but I was in a landlocked province. So, with that, our building, which we called our ship, in the basement we had a range for the riflemen, and it was the oldest building in the town, pretty much. So whenever you shot off a rifle down there, the sound just reverberated throughout the whole building. It was so loud, you come out of there and you couldn't hear a thing for about 2 days. So that was probably my favorite thing, because as a teenager, that was the greatest thing in the world. You shot off a 22 and it sounded like a cannon.
And weapons. So I've got to ask this for Anthony. Because as a medic, we don't get to play with weapons. We have a 9mm. Actually, back when I was Cav, we had a 45 on a shoulder holster and an M16. The job of a combat medic is not to kill, to save lives. We only kill if someone is threatening us or our patient. But as a mechanic, well, I got to play with weapons. So my favorite weapon was the Mark 19. And for those that don't know what a Mark 19 is it's a tripod or vehicle-mounted automatic grenade launcher that is belt or canister fed. So, Emery and Don, what were your favorite weapons to play with?
Mine was the 240, the 240 Bravo.
Okay, explain to our listeners what a 240 Bravo is.
That is a 7.62 heavy machine gun. It's kind of like the SAW, except for it was bigger.
So for our listeners, it's something Rambo would carry around, and instead of having a clip or a magazine, it's got this like long belt of bullets that you wrap around something and that it feeds through, and it fires really large bullets.
Yeah,
very large.
That are loud, and they go fast, and they penetrate things. And yeah, I don't know why you would want to carry that sucker around. I mean, so a 240 gunner, like one poor dude is going to carry the actual gun, and another poor dude is going to carry the tripod that it sits on because they're both so damn heavy. And like the 240 gunner assistant, that's the dude that's going to carry the tripod and the ammunition. So I don't know why you would want to lug that sucker around everywhere.
The 240 had a built-in bipod.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
it wasn't
you can carry a separate tripod. That's helpful.
Well, it's the same thing with the Mark 19. Mark 19, I'd have to have an assistant as well because the tripod for the Mark 19 is 70 pounds, and the Mark 19 is another 70 pounds. And that doesn't count the grenades in the canister.
Right. Yeah.
But I think my favorite Mark 19 experience was in, where were we? I think Wildflicken in Germany. And we actually had to, that was my first Mark 19 experience. And of course I was nervous because it's a very large weapon. And we were on top of a mountainside, and we had to shoot the targets were on the other side of another mountain. Because it's a long range weapon. And I dropped it on the tank every time, but it's just a boom, boom, boom. And then, of course, a boom, boom, boom on the other side of the, mountain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that was probably my favorite weapon. The stupidest weapon was called a grease gun. Mm-hmm. And it's a weapon that the 88 mic, or not the 88 mics, the mechanics on the 88, which for those that don't know what an M88 is, do a Google search of an M88 and you'll see it. It's a tank tow truck.
Mm-hmm.
And the grease gun is actually, it looks just like a maintenance grease gun, and it's a 9mm automatic pistol, if you want to call it a pistol, because it looks like a grease gun. So what was your favorite one, Emery?
I don't know. I right now I'm assigned, I guess for our listeners, I'll call it an M16, but it's the latest version of the M4 with an ACOG on it, some really good optics. So I've been enjoying training with that. It's the first time I've had optics, a sight, if you will. So that's been fun. But I guess anything with laser sight and night vision goggles is lots of fun to play with. So a laser sight is like a laser pointer pen that you attach to your gun and turn it on, and there's a tiny red dot that goes wherever the barrel is pointed. But if you put on night vision goggles, then it's like it looks like this really cool like light beam that extends from your gun. You can see the beam of light going from your gun all the way to your target. And so it's got a very sci-fi futuristic feel to it. So that's fun to play with too.
Right on, right on. What was I going to ask? God damn it.
We never got to play with modern weapons.
Just-
When we were in Sea Cadets, we all got, like, anytime we went onto a base, we got put into the canteen. And that's where we worked.
Well, that's why we're having range day tomorrow, so we can play with weapons tomorrow.
So, but the only thing we ever got to play with, we got to play with, I think it was a 9-centimeter cannon. And it was actually from a ship, an old British warship. But not, this is like, it's a pirate ship era type. And one of our officers had it. He collected all kinds of things from the military.
Yeah. So he had a working cannon. That's pretty cool.
He constantly got in trouble from the bylaw officers because his yard was just filled with old Jeeps.
I want to shift gears real quick because I know you're kind of limited on time, Emery, but it's kind of a touchy subject. But what are your thoughts on civilians owning AR-15s, which are M16 replicas and can shoot almost as fast? I don't see a reason for civilians to have military-style weapons, and I kind of see the AR-15 as a military-style weapon, especially when you call it a hunting rifle. You don't need a 30-round magazine or a 100-round drum as a civilian.
How did I know this was going to come up?
That might not be true. I heard a rumor that the deers are getting guns now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's in the event Bigfoot pops up. Come on now. I mean, I'm just one veteran with an opinion. That's why I wanted to bring this up briefly to hear the opinions of an active duty and another veteran. If you want to play with big guns, join the military. That's just my opinion.
What I've been thinking about lately is what is going on in our culture that people are afraid, and that because I see this need to own these types of weapons coming really from a place of fear. What's going on that we're afraid for our safety, our businesses, our homes, our families, and that we need to own these kinds of weapons with these capabilities, and whether it's magazines or range or style or whatever the case is. I think we need to ask those harder questions and really have frank conversations about what's going on. So I personally don't own a gun at all. I'm issued either handguns or M16 style rifles when I go to war or when I train, and I'm good at using both. But I personally don't feel the need to own them in my personal life. I don't think there's anything wrong with having hobbies. I think shooting is a lot of fun, shooting targets. At the same time, there's got to be some kind of balance between our personal freedom to pursue hobbies and the safety of our culture. And that debate as to how to find that balance, is very much relevant in our current state of things. But we need to ask our question: what's going on that we feel so strongly about the need to own all these types of weapons, and why are we afraid? And let's address those concerns.
Excellent answer.
Yeah,
Don?
well said.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you as far as people owning assault rifles. I'm not. Everyone calls them assault rifles. It's not really what the AR stands for, but the high capacity magazines are kind of ridiculous, and I think Emery said it the best as far as we need a culture shift and figure out a way to work it into our daily lives and not necessarily feel the need to protect with such dangerous weapons.
Fully agree. And no, I know AR doesn't stand for assault rifle. It just came together. I like Trippin's response. Should be the same training soldiers are required, plus insurance on weapon and ammo. Any Joe Schmo can walk into a gun shop with zero training, and this has always been my stance. If you want a gun, then you need to be educated on weapons use. That's just, we even have accidental fires in the military. I can't imagine Joe Schmo walking in and getting himself a 9mm, not knowing anything about, muzzle control or, when you put your finger on the trigger, when you don't. How to aim, how to load it, take basic weapons safety before you can get a gun. Is that going to fix our mass shooters? No, it's not. Not at all.
It's going to make them better shots.
That too. But most of our mass shooters have actually, been around weapons. So that ain't going to fix it. But when you encourage everyone to get a gun, which you see, you have an active shooter situation and everybody pulls their gun out. Now who's the shooter and who's the good guy? And if Joe Schmo doesn't know how to shoot anyway, he's going to shoot himself in the foot, make himself a target, and well, there you go. I think you don't have to take weapons away, but get smart about it.
No, I think there's a huge difference between being able to go to a range and hit a target accurately at 25, 50, 100 yards versus in an active shooter situation where maybe you've got children, other adults, innocent bystanders around, people are moving, people are fleeing, the shooter's moving. How to actually accurately attack a moving target with innocent civilians around while moving yourself. It is a really tough thing to do. It's an acquired skill that takes constant training. And your average person is not going to have that kind of skill, and most likely they'll hurt other innocent people. So, yeah, I totally agree. I was going to say something else, and I just lost it. I'll come back to it.
Welcome to my world. I lose everything. Yeah. And that goes with PTSD, which we will wind up talking about in the last hour. I don't know what kind of training you had in Afghanistan, but in Iraq, we actually had, shooting from vehicles training. And it's funny because the Delta Force guy that was teaching us how to shoot from a moving vehicle is, well, now you can tell all your friends that Uncle Sam taught you how to do drive-by shootings. It's a whole different ball game when you're in the middle of a mall and you have nothing but people screaming around you, and you pull out your cool Glock, and now what? You've got 20 panicky people running around you. Are you going to be able to shoot accurately? Probably not. You're going to shoot one of the innocents.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say. When it comes to background checks, I absolutely support the same level of training and background check that we would have someone go through to get a driver's license. I mean, for goodness sakes, you've got to go through some training and actually have an exam to be able to drive a car. It shouldn't be any different from owning a gun. And I would support taking it even a step further and going through some kind of psychological evaluation prior to owning a weapon for everyone's safety. And if we really want to get after stopping school shootings, we've got to put more money and resources into providing adequate mental health care in our country, and we've got to pay a little more attention to who's allowed to own a firearm in our country.
So I had to write a paper on Washington State gun laws because obviously I'm in Washington State, but for constitutional law, I had to write a Second Amendment paper on Washington State gun laws. And this was a couple years ago, so I don't know if things have changed in other states, but Washington State was one of the only states, or what was the only state, to actually apply DSHS background with gun purchases.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's awesome.
Completely agree.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Oh, so before you have to go, and I don't know when you're leaving, but how do you feel about war movies? Personally, I can't watch them. I have nightmares every night, so I can't watch war movies. I think the only one I can safely watch, which I do enjoy, is Megan Levy, and that was the Marine that trained dogs.
I think
Army
it's called
canines.
Max.
Huh?
No, Max is the one with the little kid.
Which one?
Max. Remember that one?
No.
It's the one where I got those two mixed up because they brought out like 5 of those dog movies at the same time.
Oh, okay.
But that one has the younger brother gets the older brother's dog that was his Army Ranger dog.
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet. Now I vaguely
It's on
remember
Netflix.
Yeah, that's one I haven't seen yet.
Have you guys seen 12 Strong?
Yeah. I
Okay.
love that movie.
So 12 Strong came out just last year, and based on a true story of early stages of the invasion of Afghanistan right after 9/11, trying to support the Northern Alliance. And at the time, I was assigned to a U.S. Army recruiting battalion, and our battalion commander was a Green Beret on loan from Special Forces to recruiting. And I asked him what he thought of the movie. And he told me that it was too Hollywood, too, sensationalized for him. And that at the same time, it brought back too many bad memories of soldiers he had lost in combat and just kind of made him sad. So I obviously, I'm not a combat soldier. I don't have his experiences at all. How do I feel about war movies? I guess it depends on the movie. Like, I really enjoyed Band of Brothers and We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson.
Yep.
As far as other movies that are, kind of over the top, unrealistic, constantly get the uniforms wrong, it's pretty obnoxious, pretty annoying.
Well, that's the fun part. The fun part is picking their uniforms apart because they aren't allowed by law to, and that's going to lead to my next question, but they're not allowed to wear the uniform correctly.
Really? Because, so was it Dennis Quaid that was in the G.I. Joe movie? As, like, the general?
I don't remember.
The general. Bruce Willis was G.I. Joe.
Uh-huh. Maybe it's
I can't remember who his general was, though.
I think it might have been Dennis Quaid. Whoever it was, he constantly wore his hat inside, his beret inside, and just bugged the shit out of me. Like, it's like, dude, you're inside, take your damn hat off. Like.
Yeah, I've made that mistake walking into a few. What the hell are those places called? Eric, where were you going to join? The Legions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they've rung the bell on me a few times, and it cost me a pretty penny.
That's funny.
All right, Don. What's your opinion of war movies, and can you watch them?
I can watch them, but when I do, I become extremely hyper alert and very much into the action. It kind of puts me back into combat mode. It
Right.
doesn't necessarily cause nightmares, but it puts me back right into that adrenaline state, and it's not necessarily a good thing for the wife and kids to see sometimes because I get pretty obnoxiously loud.
Oh, completely agree, man.
No.
I go into the nightmare mode, so I'm not allowed to watch them, and I don't watch news either because I tend to get really
Yeah.
pissed off with news. So I don't watch news. I get enough news on my Facebook news feed. So, but I will say for listeners that want to watch a very, very accurate, very good portrayal of a war movie, watch Black Hawk Down. I can't watch it, but you can. So go ahead.
There's one that's coming out called Midway that they talked to a few of the old Air Force guys, and they said this is one of the most accurate portrayals.
Did that one just come out a couple years ago?
No, this one's not out yet.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it hasn't
Okay.
come out yet. But
Yeah.
it's one of those ones that they show to certain soldiers, like certain veterans first.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that with another one. I think it was it started with a D. And it was a World War II one where they actually, like, a bunch of soldiers got caught on a beach. And they were trying to get them off, and British sailors with small boats came and rescued all of them.
Yeah, God, I was deployed trying to catch that on bootleg. I forget what it was called. I know which one you're talking about, though.
And they showed that one to a bunch of the soldiers, and not a bunch. There was like 10 that were actually at that day.
Yeah.
And they said it was absolutely correct. Like, everything about it, it was real. 2 of them had to actually leave the building when they were playing it because they couldn't handle it.
Wow.
It just took them right back to that moment.
Yeah, I think that's the one that Izzy wouldn't let me watch. She wouldn't watch it in the theater and said, "No, you're not watching it." Was it based on a combat medic?
No, it's not. Well, it's based off like 4 different soldiers.
Okay. Okay.
So it was the evacuation of British soldiers from, I think, France. They were trying to get back across the English Channel to England, and they didn't have enough boats, and the Germans were closing in, and it was going to be a total massacre. Dunkirk, yeah. And that was Churchill basically mobilized civilians in Britain to get in their whatever vessels they could possibly have and head across the Channel to rescue as many British soldiers as possible from the impending German onslaught.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. I've got to get going, guys. It's been fun. Certainly here for the next one if you need me.
Outstanding. So thank
you, sir.
So thank you, Captain Erickson. So for our listeners, that was Captain Emery Erickson. He is in South Korea. He will be on future shows when he can get away from doing his duties. And I am going to go ahead and play our next. Cole, go ahead. Cole, go ahead and introduce our next commercial break.
I'm going to, but we did screw up tonight a little bit. At S4, we always like to include everyone. And I never thought about it till we started this, but we have no service women on tonight.
They're hard to get on the show.
I know, right? So, but I have something I found on Facebook just to help represent them. So, a teacher gave her 5th grade class an assignment. Get their parents to tell them a story with a moral at the end of it. The next day, the kids came back and one by one began to tell their stories. They were all the regular types of stuff, spilled milk, and pennies saved. But then the teacher realized that only Janie was left. Janie, do you have a story to share? Yes, ma'am. My daddy told me a story about my mommy. She was a Marine pilot in Desert Storm, and her plane got hit. She had to bail out over enemy territory, and all she had was a flask of whiskey, a pistol, and a survival knife. She drank the whiskey on the way down so the bottle wouldn't break. Then she parachuted right into the middle of 20 Iraqi troops. She shot 15 of them with the pistol until she ran out of bullets, killed 4 more with the knife till the blade broke, and then she killed the last Iraqi with her bare hands. Good heavens, said the horrified teacher. What did your daddy tell you was the moral of this horrible story? Don't screw with mommy when she's been drinking.
And that was awesome. And on that note,
okay. So this instead of doing commercials tonight, because it is Veterans Day on Monday, our breaks are filled with things that we find personally endearing to us. So the first part of this is a poem that I've heard my whole life. It's called In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. And it's one of the hardest poems to actually listen to when you're standing there with World War II, Korea, and Vietnam vets, and any vet that you know lost people. So that is going to be the first part of it. The second part of it is a version of the song Hallelujah, and it is written by Leonard Cohen, and the lyrics are by Sailor Jerry. So enjoy this while we take a quick break.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses row on row that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
You packed your bags and shut the door. You crossed the sea to fight a war. You didn't know just what would happen to ya. Stepped in the dirt, boots on the ground, and gunfire was the only sound. And to yourself you whispered hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Every day and every night you walk the walk, you fight the fight. You never saw the end in sight, now did ya? The days are washing a haze of red, the blood, the mud, too many dead. Your weary soul was crying hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Too late to help you hear a shot. You know you're in a deadly spot. You never thought the day would come, now did ya? Your brother
welcome back to S4, folks. Glad you joined us tonight for our Veterans Day show. Very heartwarming rendition of Hallelujah. So this last hour, like I told the chat room, is going to be kind of intense as we talk about PTSD, the suicide rates, and homelessness. Things that veterans face after coming back. Don,
Yes.
so you've been diagnosed PTSD as well, have you not?
Yes, I have.
And how was your VA experience?
I can't complain all that much because it's not been bad. I don't get treated like a patient half the time, though, because I don't know, I went in for my back issues. They treated me like a drug addict, like I was wanting pills.
Right.
But other than that, I really can't say much because I got 100% right away. I haven't had, and I certainly don't have the horror stories that people have come up to me with when I was at the VFW and whatnot. So my experiences have been at least, I would say, mediocre.
Agreed. Again, I agree with you. I can't complain either, but I think the difference was I was into the Warrior Transition Battalion, which was geared for soldiers leaving the military. So, not sure if I've ever. I've talked about some of my experiences on the show, but so not sure if I've told this part of the story or not. But my commander basically at my 18-year mark told me, I think you've seen enough. You've already done 4 combat tours. They were getting ready to go back again for their 3rd tour as a battalion, and they wound up doing 2 more while I was actually in the WTB. But the WTB was a great concept. It had a lot of horror stories in the beginning, as any test unit gets. But the whole function of the Warrior Transition Battalion was either to heal and go back to your unit or another unit, or get ready to get out and get you prepared to get out. I don't think a veteran or a military member can ever fully be ready to get out. I'll just be honest with you. So when I got sent to the WTB, automatically they said, okay, so we're going to get you your Social Security disability going. And I'm like, what? Seriously? I'm not. I always, you say Social Security, I think you got to be, 62? You have to be. My mind wasn't on disability. My mind was, okay, so I've got some issues. I'll be going back to work, yada, yada, yada. It wasn't on disability. But they asked me, when's the last time you did your job? Well, 2007. I was actually a mechanic. And they said, well, you're not going to be able to do that again. No, the signs you exhibit, you won't be able to hold a job. So they got the ball rolling for Social Security disability. They got the ball rolling for VA. So by the time I was actually out at 19 years and 6 months, medically retired, my VA kicked off about 6 months later. So it was quick. And I've heard the horror stories. There's soldiers and Marines and sailors that have gotten out and still aren't on VA because of the stigma is part of it. There's a stigma that, if you got PTSD, you're weak, or if if you're on VA, you're weak. No, you need help. Look at the domestic violence rates. Look at the suicide rates. Look at the homeless rates. Those are soldiers. Those are veterans that never got the help they need. You still here?
I am.
Oh, where did Don go? It's so quiet.
Dawn.
I'm here. Sorry.
He's
I
falling
was
asleep.
answering a question from my wife.
Okay, gotcha.
Tell her the answer is purple.
6. Purple 6. So, I want to explain what, all soldiers have post-traumatic stress when they come back. Everyone, when they come back, they might have nightmares for a couple nights. They might jump it, a loud bang. They have some stress. Usually, according to the sources I've looked at, they say they go away after the first month. If it lasts longer than a month, that's when it goes into the disorder side, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I want to reiterate, anybody can get post-traumatic stress disorder. Firemen, policemen, if you got in a severe car accident, if you've been involved in a violent crime, that can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. Just the nature of combat is what causes post-traumatic stress disorder in soldiers, or Marines, or airmen, or sailors. I would have to say your PTS isn't going to go away after the first month. I would give it longer. Would you agree, Don?
I would agree because it takes a bit to come back and not reevaluate, but reestablish yourself in the civilian side. Even if you are still in the military, it's still quite a different military. It takes a while to reestablish yourself as a human being.
So I gotta ask Cole. So after your car wreck 2 years ago, I know you still have post-traumatic stress disorder from your car wreck.
Maybe.
No, but that's a perfect example. Anybody can get post-traumatic stress disorder from a traumatic event, whether it's a car wreck, whether it's a violent crime, sexual assault, or combat.
Some people want to tell me that it's just road rage now.
Okay, so Trip is in the chat room. Only lasts a month on paper. Everyone knows PTSD is a lifelong illness. Yes, it is. And that's why I said there's a difference between PTS and PTSD. PTSD is lifelong. PTSD doesn't go away. So they have what's called, I can't remember what they call that, EMDR, which is a rapid movement of a green light, which is supposed to put the memories from one point in your brain to another. I was told it will never work by my therapist I saw for 2 years. They've got prolonged exposure therapy, which I've had, which again, no, sitting there reliving your traumas over and over and over again, that doesn't help anybody. And now they're trying something, and I'm not sure if they got away from that, but putting soldiers in combat simulation video games. I don't see that working either. What do you think about that one, Don? Oh, Don.
I think the video games might be rough. I don't know about re-immersing myself into the combat stuff. I don't know how you can mimic that.
So
you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how they would end up doing that.
the reality of it, I don't see it being realistic enough. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think that like, so if it's not realistic, even if it does work, if it's not realistic, it's not. You know what I mean?
It's just a video
It
game.
just seems like it'd be. I'm sorry?
It's just another video game.
Yeah. And I don't think the video games are. I mean, they could probably trigger some people, but it's not too. I do play some video games here and there, so I'm not like against it, but I can see where that can trigger some flashbacks.
Exactly. I don't see where those flashbacks are going to. That's not fixing the problem. That's just bringing in flashbacks, and that's escalating.
Yeah.
So some of the symptoms of PTSD are one, feeling upset by things that remind you of what happened. Perfect example. In Iraq, they trained us to, when you come to an overpass, you switch lanes because the insurgents were dropping grenades off the overpass or explosives. So, where's all the background noise?
Where?
So, it took me quite a while to skip over that urge driving down I-5, for example, when I come to an overpass, not to switch lanes. That wouldn't work out well for commuters on I-5. Or myself.
Why not? You'd just be doing what they do every day.
I'd be pushing cars off the highway.
That's what they do every day.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see the picture of the truck on I-5 or on in Burlington today?
No.
It pushed a car into tried to push a car off the bridge. It was sideways on that little bridge.
No. The next one we all know is having nightmares. Vivid memories or flashbacks. These nightmares don't have to be combat related. They can be monsters or other things that your brain actually puts in place of the combat role. Say again?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was news to me. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be you don't have to relive the combat scene, but they say that in place of the Humvee going through town, you might not dream about that, but you might have a monster that is actually symbolized by the Iraqi that was shooting at you, or whatever the case is.
That's interesting.
So, I had to teach this class, 10 years ago now, on what PTSD is and the signs and symptoms of it to my unit. That wasn't fun because, 80% of our soldiers coming back have PTSD. Not all of them get help for it, though. Which comes to the next section of homelessness. So another common thing with PTSD is called self-medication. So the veteran on drugs or alcoholic that you see probably has PTSD, but they're self-medicating instead of getting help for it. Or maybe asked for help and been ignored, because that's what our government does. Ignores our issues. Which leads to homelessness. And I think it's 30% of our homeless are veteran. So they tried to give me prazosin for nightmares. Now, prazosin is actually a blood pressure medication. So, not really sure how that's supposed to, it didn't help me. Yeah, I took it for 2 months and they say, Well, you didn't take it long enough. Um, how long am I supposed to take it where I get out of bed and I fall down? So, yeah. They ever try to put you on Prednisone, Don?
No, actually, they didn't put me on anything. They just labeled me as PTSD and pushed me off. I got a separate medical insurance, and I've been placed on Prozac and Zyprexa.
Yeah, they got me on escitalopram and buspirone. They have me on bupropion too, for which is a depression medication. I'm not depressed. Well, sometimes I think I get depressed, but that's a hard one to get a feel on. Escitalopram is an escitalopram is a mood stabilizer. Buspirone's anti-anxiety. And Tripp is saying as soon as they admit they need help, they lose benefits. I think that goes with the stigma. They don't lose benefits per se, but you've got soldiers that lose their jobs because now they've got PTSD, and that's where the DVA comes in, the Disabled Veterans Association, or what's the other one? What's the civilian version? The ADA, American Disabilities Association.
Yeah.
And they can very easily go to those organizations for help. Feeling emotionally cut off from others. I have an excellent mate that helps me with that. I feel connected. What I don't feel connected with is the civilian population. I feel distance from the civilian population, I think, more and more. We won't go into that. But people don't get veterans. They never will. Until you've walked in our boots and seen what we've seen, you won't. So feeling numb or losing interest, symptoms, loss of interest in things you used to care about. And I had to explain to the chief of psychiatry at the VA when they did my unemployability assessment about that. And I had to tell them, look, before the Army, I had fun at the mall. I had fun shopping. And I can still go in stores as long as I have my mate with me. A lot of our shopping is done late at night when nobody's around or less people are around. But I don't enjoy the mall anymore. I don't enjoy crowds. I don't enjoy noise unless I'm making the noise. So 4th of July is hell, but it's a hit and miss. If I'm the one lighting the fireworks, I know to expect it. I know what's causing the noise. How do you do on 4th of July, Don?
I don't do very well. I think the best one I've had was actually on your land. So yeah, if I know it's going to happen, it's okay. If it's surprising, it's not. And I just kind of stay inside and don't enjoy the fireworks because everyone around me likes to light the big ones.
Yeah, and going back for a second, Tripp is saying, yeah, self-help is causing the substance abuse because seeking mental care is frowned upon. And that's really bad in the military. Because in the military, if you're known for going to a psychiatrist, then yeah. And I've heard some stories where that's even been a career killer. As far as now you're labeled mentally unfit, and put on, the crap details. Once I was labeled PTSD, they took my security clearance away. So, other examples, they figure if you got PTSD, you're not fit for a security clearance. Feeling constantly on guard. So that's one reason I'm a night owl, because I'm always sitting by my window. I'm always looking out the window. I don't like going to sleep because of the nightmares, part of it. Uh, Even if I go to bed, I can't shut my mind down. So, again, that's why having this show late at night on Saturdays doesn't bother me at all. It's great seeing people seeing our friends in the chat room, because I know they're up too. So, do you feel constantly on guard, Don, even without watching war movies?
Yeah, I check the locks 10 and 12 times before going to bed. I have to take some, like, I think I take about 20 milligrams of melatonin on top of my medication every night to get to sleep because my mind does wander.
Right.
And it's not necessarily to war things or anything else like that. It just wanders. It just goes into corridors that I just can't seem to get out of. And I don't fall asleep.
Yeah. I know that one all too well. The next one I know you've got. Feeling irritated or having angry outbursts.
Oh, yeah.
Angry outbursts, I don't get them so much. I'm always irritable. My anger level is always just right there. So that's hard, especially with today. That's why I don't watch news.
Just tell people what I tell people.
What's that?
I'm just an asshole.
Well, I like to get a concealed carry, but I know better than that.
Oh, yeah.
I have weapons. They stay in my house. They don't leave my property unless I'm walking on the mountain for defense against any threats on the mountain. Usually wildlife. There's other threats too, but I know myself enough to where I probably shouldn't ever pack because I would be in prison. So irritation and angry outbursts, yes, I know all too well. Having difficulty sleeping. So once I get to sleep, I'm fine, other than the nightmares. The nightmares usually don't wake me up. Again, it depends. If I've watched something, I haven't watched a war movie in a long time. I don't count Megan Levy because, well, other than the IED scenes, that's a very tame movie for a war movie. So that one I can handle. The major war movies, I don't touch, not even during the day. And having trouble concentrating. How do you do with concentration, Don?
Not so hot. There are times where I'm sitting here thinking that I'm listening so intently on what's going on, and then it's like, wait, am I even on topic anymore? Like, it's difficult sometimes because I'm also scatterbrained. I could be doing something and then doing something else at the same time, but I'm not giving my full attention to either of those things.
You know, it really sucks doing schoolwork to the point I can't read. I can't focus, so I can't read books. So my textbooks I skim. I
Yeah.
can't read it. I can't read an entire textbook. There's no way. I'd never comprehend it all. So I skim the important parts. Um, and I'm lucky I've got a 3.50. and I'm very happy. I've only got actually 1.5 classes left for my degree, because I'm so burnt out on school after 4 years. It's just, yeah, no. So
Yeah.
the concentration part, most definitely. And Trip says audiobooks. Dude, I don't even know if I can handle audiobooks. I really don't. I just uh, music. I gotta say, I think the most healing for me is my music and gardening when I can get into it. Just something about watching plants grow and knowing that you planted the seeds and it's gonna make food. Uh, and living in the mountains. I couldn't see living in the city or in a town. Uh, even where you live, Cole, at the Cape, you're not close enough to people. You don't have people living right next door to you. Yeah,
Well, there's that one guy. You've heard him.
I've heard him, but yeah, we can run outside and scream, and nobody's gonna pay attention to it. So it's nice living in the mountains.
Yes, it is.
And you live in the suburbs, don't you, Don?
Yeah, I live in a suburb of Sacramento.
So what's the nearest house? I mean, do the neighbors bother you?
They see me every day. I see them every day. They're really close by. It's about a 10-foot gap between our houses.
Ew. How do you do with that?
I'm always feeling constantly judged and watched by them, so I'm watching them.
Okay. So being jumpy or easily startled, and they kind of already hit that, but I would say, I hear a loud car, I hear a backfire. Again, it depends. That's not an all the time thing. Sometimes my mind tells me, oh, that's just a backfire. Other times, if I don't expect it and it just happens when I'm on a certain, I guess, mode, uh, I, I will jump. Yeah, I can't imagine what you go through living in a suburb with backfires and loud noise, Don.
Yeah, they don't happen all that often as you might think, but at the same time, it does kind of like is that actually gunfire, or is that some sort of like backfire of a vehicle or something like that? Like it's hard to differentiate between the two.
It is. It's hard to differentiate between gunfire and fireworks sometimes.
Yes, that's why I have to watch them go off.
And, we were mortared every day in Balad, Iraq, from '04 to '05. And to the point where they would walk them in. So for those that don't know what that term means, that's where they'll launch multiple mortars and they'll go at different angles. So they'll have one explosion, another explosion will come, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, 50 feet, whatever their angle is. They'll walk them onto the base. And there was one night, and so our protocol was as soon as you hear a mortar, you throw your gear on and you jump into a bunker. So it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I heard the first explosion. It was way out. I heard the second explosion. It was closer. My mind told me, oh shit, they're walking him in. So I threw my gear on. I jumped out of my trailer into the bunker, and the third one was closer. The fourth one landed across the street, and this was on our base in Blood. They got smart. They would actually drop an ice block into the mortar tube, replace the motor, and they'd go home. They'd be drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette. Yes, they're Iraqis. Yes, they drink beer. And, 2 hours later, after the ice block melts, the motor drops, and they're long gone. So we had technology that would actually trace where the motor was coming from. So we'd send out, a QRF, quick reaction team, to check on that location, and they'd find the tube, but nobody's around because they're home by that time. So Vic's asking, do you ever use earplugs? No, because I'd be wearing earplugs all the time, and that just doesn't work. I have a 7 and 8 year old. I'm doing schoolwork. I'm working on projects around the house. Earplugs for 4th of July. Again, I've got kids. I don't want to drag, affect their life. I just suck it up. So
I'm the same way.
Yeah. It's something I live with. It's something we got to deal with. Earplugs to sleep. Well, when I get sleep, no, because if I lay down, I'll toss and turn for a little bit. It depends. I know when I'm ready to go to sleep, and that's why I lay down. So, no, I live in the mountains. I don't have to worry about a whole lot of noise most of the time. Don, do you use earplugs when you go to sleep?
No, I have to be like that. No, I can't go to bed with the earplugs in because if I need to hear something going on, I have to hear it. No, that doesn't happen.
No, and
it gives me anxiety as it is right now, thinking about having earplugs in, someone robbing my house.
Right. And that goes with the hypervigilance. It's a no-win situation. It's just like, I've got sleep apnea, but I can't use a machine because, back in 2008, 2009, when they diagnosed me with sleep apnea, they didn't have the nasal pillow, which they do now, but now they won't give it to me. But they had a mask. I can't wear a mask while I'm sleeping. That just, no. So, no, I don't need earplugs because, one, I got to be able to hear my kids. Two, like you, I want to hear if that door opens.
Yeah.
It goes with the hypervigilance. So the next thing, frequently avoid places or things that remind you of what happened. Well, that goes with, if we really have to shop during the day, I'm pushing the cart. My mate's usually right next to me. The kids are keeping me occupied if we take them shopping. But I'm more comfortable going late at night when there's less people around. Years ago when it was, I'm what they call at a plateau. And being at a plateau means you're not going to get worse or you're not going to get better. I'll always be the same. I won't get better. So you just, you know what your triggers are by this point. So you know to stay away from those triggers. You don't go shopping in the middle of the day on payday, for example, because everyone's going to be there. And Trippin says live fire drill is supposed to stop at 10:30. Yeah, I couldn't be around live fire drills. And he's near Fort Bragg.
I'm honestly still trying to figure out what my triggers are.
Well, one of them I can tell you, like you said before. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but driving around the same spot where your accident was at night.
Yeah, like I can tell you how I got over the whole driving thing. Have you ever watched those videos on Facebook that come up of all the horrible drivers from across the world and the crazy accidents?
Right.
I watched those for like 6 days straight.
Well, that'll do it.
Yeah, it honestly made it so that I could drive again.
Okay.
Is that kind of like re-immersion therapy?
I guess I would not suggest that for you guys. Just saying.
No.
But
See, my therapist had me sit in his office and think about every traumatic event in combat that I've been through, and write that over and over, and think about it over and over again. And I wound up in 18 North, which is the psych ward in Madigan. Um, and so when I finally saw him again, a week later, he's like, "Well, I recognize." He's like, "I'm Sergeant Cooper. I'm really sorry." He's like, "I thought that was going to help. We know it. We know it doesn't help in your situation." And on that note, ENDR will not work for you either, because it's the same concept. So, everyone's different. You find out what works. In your case, it was watching videos over and over again. And that would be a variation of immersion therapy. But the difference is, too, you did it within a year of your accident. So it was still fresh enough in your memory to face that and overcome it. In my case, for example, I was dealing with traumas that happened in 1993, and then, of course, going back to Iraq 2 tours after that fact just compounded more traumas in my brain. So,
yeah,
I've got multiple tours that all just jumbled together, basically. So next on the list is consistently drink or use drugs. You see that today. You see that today with a lot of veterans that never asked for help, never got the help they needed, and they're self-medicating. And that leads them down a road that they won't overcome without help. Whether it's peer support, even peer support could help that. And the perfect example of that is Five Finger Death Punch. Oh God, help me out here.
On the right, the righteous side of heaven.
There you go.
Righteous side of hell, the wrong side of heaven, I think is what it's called.
There you go. Awesome
wrong
video.
Side of heaven, righteous side of hell.
I love that video. It brings a tear to my eye
every
time I watch it.
Yep.
That, and believe it or not, Five Finger Death Punch are not veterans. They just know. I think they have veterans on the band, but their videos get it right. That's for sure. So consider harming yourself or others. That's where your suicide comes in. That's where you have veterans that go into a rage and kill others. You don't hear about that so much. Most of your active shooters that I've seen don't have military training, and I find that funny. I really do. I would expect those active shooters to have military training and have a PTSD trigger that caused it, but they don't. Have you ever looked into that, Don?
The active shooter thing?
Yeah.
No, I haven't, but I wouldn't doubt it, because to be blunt about it, if it was military, it would be much more efficient.
It would. Those are random shooters with max capacity magazines, max capacity drums with AR-15s usually.
Yeah.
And a pistol for backup.
For me, a 30-round magazine would be 30 people dropping, and
well, for us it'd be one shot, one kill.
That's how that goes.
Yeah, it'd be one shot, one kill.
That's why we'd be much more efficient.
So it's been a good show tonight. It hasn't really been as intense as our last 2 years of veteran shows. If you really want to hear more war stories and things like that, go back to our last 2 years of veteran shows, and tonight's been a lot more light. It's been not so political. I'm happy with that. We didn't get into politics a whole lot, other than Second Amendment, but that had to be discussed. I wanted to hear, I've got my views, but I wanted to hear Emery and Don and their what they thought about AR-15s, and do civilians really need them? No, they don't. So as we wrap up the show tonight, Trip's been putting the crisis lines in the chat room, and I'm gonna say it. If you are a veteran in crisis, most veterans want to talk to other veterans. I'm more comfortable talking to another veteran or somebody I can connect with. But the Veteran Crisis Hotline is 1-800-273-8255 and press 1. So that is the crisis hotline for veterans. Don't hesitate to call it if you feel suicidal.
Reach out to your buddies too.
Say again?
Oh, I'm just saying, reach out to your buddies too.
Exactly.
They may be able to help you out.
And if you can't, most of us have that camaraderie with other veterans. If you can't find your buddies for whatever reason, or you can talk to Don or I. You can find us on Facebook easily. I've only lost one soldier to suicide. I've been lucky on that regard. And, that was a messed up story. I think I've talked about it briefly in other shows. One other show at least. And, it really sucks. One of my best friends actually committed suicide here a few years ago as well. He was a Navy vet. Went through Desert Storm on a boat. Oh, I'm sorry, vessel. But, one suicide is one suicide too many when it comes to veterans. And we're, I believe, still at 22 a day. And, Trips in the chat room saying a soldier's life affects more than who they live with. It's something that's really not paid attention to a lot. It should be. It should be a focus. And, I'm, again, not going to go into the politics of it, but taking care of veterans should be a priority. So we're going to go ahead and start wrapping it up. Don, you got any last words?
No, just stay safe out there, brothers, and make sure that you take care of yourself. If you need help, you need help. It's not weak.
No, not at all. Cole, you got anything? Any last words to say?
Yep. So I know you guys aren't that into hearing it, but from the bottom of my family's heart, thank you for your service. And thank you to every soldier out there. Doesn't matter if you're retired, serving for right now.
And
even the ones, and especially the ones who never made it home. Thank you so much for everything that you have all given up.
Exactly. And coming from you mean it. And I want to clarify too, because I know we have a lot of locals that listen to the show. And I posted a picture of me in uniform with my grandson, and there were like 20 different thank you for your services. And I want to clarify, it's not that we don't say thank you for saying that. I know most of the locals up here do mean it. Most of the locals up here do know what we go through and know what we're trying to fix. Even having been in the military and done our duty, and coming back and still trying to fix the community to make it safer. And it's the leadership of the community that doesn't listen. It's not that we're not trying, but we have experiences that can actually help. We're not trying to be troublemakers. We're trying to help. And
I have one more thing to say.
What's that?
For all our listeners on S4, it is November. Our Christmas shows do not start until December, which means every time you put up a Christmas decoration in November, Santa kills an elf. Just think about that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, and Tripp is saying it's okay to ask for help. Getting help for oneself is getting help for those around us as well. And that's absolutely right. Think about your families. Think about your kids, your grandkids. If that doesn't help you, reach out for help. Call the crisis line, and I will say it one more time. It is 1-800-273-8255. Press 1. So on that note, next week we are talking divination tools. Are Ouija boards, tarot cards, pendulums, are they dangerous? What about scrying mirrors? No, they're divination tools. It's how you use
That's
them to
not
make them
true.
dangerous.
Some
What's
of them
not
have
true?
pointy edges.
Well, they do. But there are no pointy sticks in divination that I can think of. And where is Joe? Alon's
Right?
my brother. And for those that don't know what Alon's is, it's cavalry. For always ready. So on that note, y'all stay safe out there. Thank you, Don, for being on the show tonight. Thank you, Cole. Thank you, Emery. Emery was an awesome asset to tonight's Veterans Show. And thank you to our listeners, because without you guys, we wouldn't be doing S4. So see you next week. Stay safe out there.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight on S4, the official voice of Forest Moon Paranormal. You can contact S4 through our website at www.s-4radio.com or on Facebook. Make sure you give us a like on our page and join the Forest Moon Paranormal group. If you are interested in advertising, take a look at our packages and contact Cole or Eric at 1-360-999-2830. Again, thank you. And remember, keep your eyes to the sky.